I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. So this evening, we are here, we've gathered here this evening to conduct superintendent finalist interviews and presentations. Our first candidate this evening is Dr. Michael Whaley, and he's just getting himself comfortable. Just a few things before we proceed, kind of the order of operations, if you will. For each candidate, I'll introduce myself, which I'll do momentarily, and ask the members of the school committee to do the same. For each of these candidates' names were forwarded to us by the screening committee that was put together. We had 24 applications in total, and 7 persons were interviewed for first interviews by the screening committee. Tonight, we're going to interview the 3 finalists, starting with Dr. Whaley. Tonight's process is an opportunity for the candidates to introduce themselves to the Tiverton community and make their case as to why they are the best candidate for our schools. I ask that everyone in attendance be respectful, and I'm not anticipating any trouble with this mob. And that, everyone listen and gives us all the chance to hear what the candidates have to offer. To ensure an equal and fair experience for each candidate, there will be no public Q&A as part of tonight's interviews. Each candidate will be asked to introduce themselves with a 3-minute-ish maximum. Then you'll be asked to present your 90-day superintendent entry plan, and I see you have come prepared for that. And that will be timed at 15 minutes maximum. Mrs. Polish at the table here will be warning everyone with cue cards when they're 1 minute out and ready to stop. Then you'll be hearing questions, 1 question from each school committee member. And those have been agreed upon in advance. They will be the same questions for each candidate. And there won't be, because of the desire for us to do everything the same per candidate, there won't be any follow-up questions. And then finally, once we wrap up, time permitting, I'll ask you to give a closing statement. Okay? Any questions from the members of the committee?
Each question is 5 minutes?
Yes, each question is going to be timed at 5 minutes max. So if you are, if you're done ahead of time, no harm, no foul. But we'll ask that you keep it to 5 minutes max. So first in front of us this evening is Dr. Michael Whaley. He's currently the Assistant Superintendent with the West Warwick Public Schools and has been since July of 2022. Prior to that, he was the principal of Burrillville High School from 2010 to 2022, 12 years, quite the long tenure. I am Diane Farnworth. I'm the chair of the committee, and I will ask everyone coming down from here to introduce themselves.
Hi, Deb Polish, and I am the vice chair.
Your microphone, Deb? Yes, if everyone could have their microphones.
Deb Polish, and I am the vice chair.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Kim Parkett.
Good evening. I'm Elaine Pavo.
Hi, Dr. Whaley. Jocelyn Sherman.
And welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
So to kick things off, Dr. Whaley, if you'd like to give a quick introduction for yourself.
I am very honored to be here. My goal has been to be a superintendent for a few years now, and I have followed the Tiverton School District for a while. As I was in Burrillville, one of our comparables was Tiverton, similar sizes, similar districts. And so that has led me to apply for this position. I think it's a district that I would fit well in, that my expertise and skill set would complement the team that is already here. I think in my 23 years, I've had the opportunity to experience a lot of different things. I've had great mentors and people who have allowed me to experience all the things. I've done all the things, from being an academic advisor to a coach to being the dean of students at Rogers High School, assistant principal. I've held all the positions, and I think I have a really well-rounded experience that I can bring to Tiverton and work with the team here to help to move the district forward.
Thank you. Okay, so if you are ready to dive into your presentation, when you're ready to start, Mrs. Polish will begin timing you.
Okay. So, for brevity, my slide deck is a little slimmed down version of the plan that is in the folders and I shared electronically. And I think I want to start with the strong leadership begins with active listening, genuine understanding, and collaborative engagement. That really spoke to me in terms of how I want to enter a district, how I've entered past positions, in terms of really being an active listener, engaging with students, teachers, parents, school committee members, the community, and really being collaborative. I've really striven to, as I've entered each position, not come in and make changes. That's not my style. I'm not that type of leader. What I want to do is to listen and understand and be transparent in what I'm thinking and add to the work that's already going on in the district and just bring my perspective. So the purpose of my entry plan is to really, develop a comprehensive understanding of the operations, the finances, and the academic programming in Tiverton. I would want to be collaborative and transparent, build trust, and really the first 90 days would be about laying the groundwork for everything that comes after that. So I think the two keys from this slide would be the listening and relationship building that I think is so important in any leader transition. When I developed the plan, it was really around looking at the candidate profile, looking at the strategic plan, and then my own research that I did in preparation. And so I think setting a set of guiding principles was important to me, and understanding that it's not just the school district or the school committee, it's really an introduction starting tonight, the community to me, getting to know who I am as a person, who I am as a leader. And so that goes into the next steps of being visible, being in classrooms, being in schools, meeting with community leaders, organizations. So the information gathering, the relationship building, learning from you, who are the people in the community that I need to know, who do I need to meet, who do I need to talk to, what are the first steps that I will need to take as the district leader to further the goals of the district. I would want to assess strengths and challenges, build a sense of trust, collaboration, and transparency. Transparency is very important to me. I think to help parents, the community, the town leaders understand the needs of the district, we have to be very transparent. We have to be very thoughtful in the information that we post publicly. We need to be very open. And so that's a key for me throughout my entry plan, is really establishing a pattern of transparency, developing a comprehensive understanding. And I think at the end of the initial period, I think for me, I very much like to share what I learn. I approach things in a way where I want to acknowledge and appreciate all the good work that's happening in the district. You can't be in any district and not know that there's good work happening. And sometimes somebody will come in and not do that, and it can initially create some friction and resentment. So I think I want to appreciate and acknowledge the work that's happening, and I have a different perspective. I'd be coming from the outside, and just lend my thoughts and opinion and work as a team to understand all the great things that are happening in Tiverton and move the work forward. So I think for my plan, the things that I thought would happen regularly, they have to be frequent and regular stakeholder engagement. So I imagine over the first 3 months, most of my time would be spent meeting with people, getting to know the schools, getting to know the students, just learning everything I can about Tiverton and the Tiverton School District. Going back to my days as a science teacher, I'm very much, a data-driven person. I like spreadsheets. I like my data. I like to know all the things. So I think I don't like to make decisions without supporting it with the data. And if we need to do something, this is why we need to do it. So keeping notes, keeping logs, keeping good data would be something I would look to do through the process. And then just being responsive. I have enough experience now to know that things can and will change. There's nothing that says, a boiler will go, or the hot water will go, or a pipe will burst. I've had all those things happen, and you have to be ready to tackle those challenges head on, and keep kids in school. So, I think just being responsive and flexible to what's happening in the day-to-day. So I developed 3 goals for my entry plan. Goal 1, fostering that culture of trust, collaboration, and effective communication. Goal 2, addressing the pressing operational and enrollment-related challenges of the district. And Goal 3, around strategic planning and vision alignment. So in terms of my goal areas, there's really subtopics, and then in the presentation, some key action steps. Goal 1 is really, again, about establishing and building relationships, establishing from my interactions with the community, with teachers, students, parents, administrators, that I'm going to be thoughtful, they can trust me, I'm going to be approachable, and really about building that sense of, I may be new, but I'm part of the team. I'm here. We're all working for the good of the district and the students in the district. I think a highlight here, in terms of the action steps, I think there would be a number of one-on-one meetings. I think as part of getting to know you, I would want to meet one-on-one with each of you, building administrators, key leaders, members of the unions in the district, town officials. That would be an important step for this goal. And so one of the things I've done as part of the team in Burrowville and I brought to West Warwick was really looking at a communication plan and looking at how effective are our methods of communication. And I've done a communication audit a few different ways. I've clearly, I can see the website in my head, and, I think Tiverton has a nice website with lots of information. The Facebook page, I've seen that. You've got the social media streams. So I think lending a lens, and I think as a new superintendent coming in, it's a good time to assess how are we communicating our message to the community, what messages are we sending, gathering some information, some feedback from different stakeholder groups, and then setting some goals in terms of communication and developing a comprehensive plan moving forward would be part of this goal for me. Goal 2, operational and enrollment challenges. it was apparent in the screening interview and in some of the research. Tiverton is a community that has experienced a significant enrollment decline. And it's funny, somebody had shared with me the kids count fact book, and then I looked, and I think from 2010 to 2020, there's been a 10% decline in births, which, I think I said at the interview, it's not just Tiverton. This is a phenomenon that we're seeing statewide. So each district has kind of had to respond to that in different ways. And so really understanding what is happening with enrollment, what are the trends, and that for me is really just wanting to understand what's happening in Tiverton and what are the strategies we can employ to keep our students here and potentially attract new students. In the candidate profile, I found it interesting that there was mention of the Tiverton really wanting to develop housing in the community, so I would want to understand that and how that might impact the district and our facilities. And then, as another action step for this goal, understanding the budget, budget cycle, budget process, and really thinking about, I'm already thinking to FY27. And I think that's almost from day one, that's the mindset that you have to have. I think we know in most communities, state aid isn't something that's going to be increasing, especially with the current economic climate in the state. So I think, as I thought about this, and even today there was, I read an article about Gloucester, and they just had to lay off too many teacher assistants. But really, towns and school districts really need to rethink how the process that they engage in for the budget, and I say predictability, in that the town and the schools, we need predictability, and we're not going to get that from the state. So I really think we're going to have to come together and figure out a predictable way that's manageable. So it's predictable for taxpayers, it's predictable for parents, and we are having really good kids for programs. And so I think as I've thought about this, I've already thought to, jumping to FY27, even though I'm still working on FY26, but in my head, you're always thinking about your budget, especially in a district like Tiverton, where there are funding challenges. Goal 3, strategic planning and vision. I have spent a lot of time developing strategic plans. I was the chair, the last strategic plan in Burrillville, I was the chair of that committee, and one of my first charges in West Warwick was to develop a strategic plan for West Warwick that was aligning with the new state SPS system. So for me here, the one that I really like is clarifying our now and our next, and that's really important to me in terms of understanding how do we feel about Tiverton now? What are we doing well? Where are our challenges? What can we improve? In really understanding that, I think, is important for any superintendent in any district. And then being able to work with different stakeholders to vision, where do we want to be? What's our goal? What are the programs that we want to have for our students? And I know CTE is really important in Tiverton. You can, just in the main office, you can see that. So looking at CTE and understanding how important that program is, how can we, as an example, how can we expand our CTE program? How can we expand it to the middle school? So the strategic planning and vision, I feel very comfortable with that goal in terms of being able to really look at, got the strategic plan from the website, moving it forward, aligning it to SPS system and ride, and developing new strategic goals or revising the ones we currently have. My concluding thoughts. I was appreciative of all the pictures on the website. I think I will conclude with, I am eager to embark on this journey in Tiverton. I know that there are talented educators. I know that the school committee is supportive of the district and wants the district to move forward. I get the sense that there are engaged parents, an engaged municipality in terms of wanting to support the district, but wanting to support the district in a responsible way. So I am happy I am here, and I will gladly answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Okay. So each member of the committee has a copy of the questions, and yes, you do. I'll share with you if I have to. Okay. We're going to start with Jocelyn Sherman. She has the first question, and again, take a moment to think about it, and if you could keep your answer to 5 minutes or less, that would be great. Thank you. Jocelyn.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. So, first question. A small school district such as ours requires a hands-on leader willing to dig in and manage day-to-day challenges for our district. How would you balance this while maintaining the vision of our strategic plan?
It speaks to me, and that's, I think, where I thrive. I've always been hands-on. I've always been, I will say, I'm not an expert at any one thing, but I have a very diverse skill set where in my current role, I work with professional development, teaching and learning, curriculum implementation, but I also get to work in human resources. I worked hand in hand with my superintendent on the budget cycle this year and really engaging in that process with her and our finance director. And so last year we had some concerns at our middle school, and I was assigned to go there and work with the building leaders to stabilize Deering and just help to move the building forward. So that wasn't going to my office at central office. It was going to the middle school, setting up in the principal's office, walking the hallways, talking to teachers, talking to kids, and being a presence in the building. And I still had all the other things that I had to do in terms of the district responsibilities. So those are things that come up as I've thought about this and things that I've dealt with. I certainly think, what happens when a lot of teachers are out because, the flu happens. Somebody just said the norovirus happens, right? And so, may I have to go sub in a classroom for a day? Sure. But I'm still the superintendent. I still have to do that job. So you find the time, the appropriate time to handle those duties and responsibilities. And the first and foremost responsibility is to ensure that students are safe and secure in the school, and that teaching and learning is taking place. So, I see that as a strength of mine, being able to prioritize and triage tasks that are before me, and accomplishing those things in an order that makes sense.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Mrs. Pavo.
Thank you. Can you provide a detailed example
Your
of
microphone's not on.
how you
Start again.
handled
Start.
a bullying incident or a student or staff faculty member?
That was bullying or
Bullying and or harassment of some sort.
so I have two different hats for this. There's the principal hat and then like the district administrator hat. And I think I'll start in the district sense of I found and in working with our legal counsel, you've got to have really good policy. You've got to have really good procedure. You've got to have forms that are aligned to law and regulation. One of the roles I've taken on this year is that of our Title IX coordinator. So you've got to train the people who are responsible for handling those situations. I think even if it is a matter of, it's not necessarily Title IX, but just a bullying issue, I think training of administrators and teachers is very helpful. And I also think from that end, having your policies and procedures, talking about them with students and families, oftentimes an incident can happen between two students that's happened just once and that is termed bullying. And that's not necessarily bullying, something you need to deal with for sure, but pervasive and progressive bullying is different. From a principal perspective, I think understanding that you need to have a process in that if it's an issue between two students, you know, you're dealing at any age level with young men, young women, children who are still growing and maturing and, you know, may not be socially and emotionally developed. You take that individually and you utilize your process. You can always, I've rarely experienced where you can get to a place between a student, two students, where whether you're using a restorative circle or mediation, you can't find the middle ground and come to an understanding. There are situations where that doesn't happen, so I think that's where I have utilized student safety plans, where if there's a bullying issue, and I know you asked for a specific one, and there's lots in my head, in terms of I have seen issues of social media harassment between two students, and you know that's predominantly I think what we see a lot of now is the social media issues where a student will go on Facebook, or it's really Snapchat now, or the app that I don't know about because I don't want to know about it, where they're making comments, and then that comes into the school, and usually the students will report it to the administrator, and then you know it's the process of investigating that, what was said online, how is it impacting the students, how have the tentacles grown, you know, and when I say that, I mean, who's commenting on it, who's negatively commenting on it, who's supporting it, and then, you know, that's a process where you really just have to bring students in, talk with them, find out what's going on, bring parents in if needed, and if warranted, discipline as appropriate, but try to come to a resolution with all of the parties involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn. How do you maintain fidelity to the Rhode Island Education Reform Act while maintaining transparency and accountability with your school board?
It's a balance. You know, I think the school board has responsibilities that are delegated by law and regulation. Superintendent has responsibilities that are delegated by law and regulation. And then there's a gray area, right? And so I think that goes back to the relationship piece. You know, I think I would want to be very clear And I would want you to be very clear with me in terms of how we communicate. I would want us to be open. So I think from my perspective, that is keeping the school committee informed. And, you know, I think the strategy that I've seen that is successful is kind of the weekly update. You know, Dr. Slito and Mrs. Tarasevich both utilize that strategy, and it works well. I think it's really important for the superintendent and the school committee chair to have a good, strong relationship that, again, is built on trust and understanding. You have to trust that the superintendent is going to, you know, run the district in a way that aligns with, you know, your strategic vision. And I don't know any way to do that other than through open, honest communication, and just having that running dialogue. And I imagine at first, whoever comes into this role, that's going to be really important in terms of, you know, you've got to work together, break bread, to really understand one another, and how I function as an educational leader, and I would need to work with you to understand how you function as a school committee, individually and collectively.
Thank you. Kim?
With traditional school district enrollment in Rhode Island declining, could you share some strategies that would attract and retain students in the Tiverton Public Schools?
So given this some thought, and, you know, I the website and in even being here tonight, the fields outside, I see the brand. And so I think one of the strategies is you really want to have a mentality pre-K through 12 that I think we're all Tiverton Tigers, that we're unified in what we believe in our approach, and you're creating a community and a culture where kids want to be here. Students are feeling safe, secure, if they're feeling connected to the adults in the building. And we know connections are so important for a whole lot of reasons, then they're going to want to be here. And so you're going to create, my friend is staying, I want to stay. And then I think there's the academic program. You want to be able to offer a well-developed academic program. You know, when you think of elementary, you want to have solid curricula, solid teaching and learning, so that students are coming to the middle and high school prepared, especially in light of the new secondary regulations. And that flows. And so as you're providing support and intervention for students at the elementary level, you're engaging in, if a student needs specialized supports and services, specialized instruction, those things are happening and occurring in a way that is, to parents, feels good, feels natural, and again, you're building the brand. I think I do bring an expertise in CTE programming. I worked with the team in Burrillville to, I think by the end we had 10 fully approved CTE programs. In my time in West Warwick, we've added 3 approved CTE programs. Right now, I'm primarily responsible for the Perkins grant, the categorical grant. So I'm very familiar with those funding streams and sources and the number of grants that are available to schools and districts. And looking at the programs, Tiverton offers a really nice array of programs, and I think there are education. We added education in West Warwick, and cybersecurity as an addition to computer science, which they're not heavy lifts, and they really complement what already the programs you already have. So I think adding programs, career and tech programs, having choices for students in terms of You know you're going to have, if we don't have AP and honors courses at the high school, we will lose students because we will have students who want to take those courses. So looking at the ways in a small high school, you can't always offer all the things all the time. So what are the ways we can strategically design the master schedule so that students will have as many opportunities as possible? And then I think, going back to the connections piece, every student in the district should have an adult, a district of this size should have an adult that they can identify with. And I think if you've got a robust academic program, if you're building connections and building a brand, and then I think the other aspect I will mention quickly is our facilities. We've got to take care of our facilities. We've got to invest in our facilities. Students will see, when they walk into a building, they will see the shape that the building is in. So I think maintaining our facilities is also a way to retain our students.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Deb.
And we'll end on a lighter note with me. You've spent significant time learning about our community and about our school district. What excites you the most about coming to Tiverton and coming to our community?
Honestly, I think it's that it's small. I think it's small but dynamic. I think one of the things I would be excited about is I do miss the kids. I do miss, and I've got 3 of my own. And so, I get to participate in their life and what they're doing. But there's that aspect of knowing students, knowing them by name, knowing who they are, what they're interested in, that I don't get right now, that I think in Tiverton, I'd have a real opportunity to be in classrooms, to learn about the students and really what they're interested in. Get to really know the teaching staff, the building administrators. That is something that I think I would be really excited about. I think I'm a problem solver. I like puzzles. Might sound weird, but the funding piece is like a puzzle, right? And so I like that challenge of let's figure out how we can do that. Let's really work with the town and figure out how we can, because it's not working. It's not working anywhere in this state. It's an unsustainable system right now. And it's really going to be incumbent, I think, in terms of school districts and municipalities to work together and figure that out. Because we're talking about kids and we're talking about their education, and it's just so important that we have to figure that component out. So I think the smallness, the ability to, I think, do some things programmatically to attract and retain our students excite me, and the funding component.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've reached the end of our question period, and I just want to give you, Dr. Whaley, an opportunity to deliver a closing statement if you'd like.
So I think I would just like to really thank you for this opportunity. I think Tiverton is a special community. It has a lot of really good things going on. It's small but mighty, and I would look forward to the opportunity to serve as the next superintendent.
All righty. Well, I thank you very much for coming in today, and we look forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Our next candidate isn't due until, to start until the top of the hour, so I don't know if we want to take a brief recess.
Can I ask you a
Thank you.
question?
We're out of the meeting.
Oh.
Are we ready to restart? All right, thank you. Okay, our second candidate this evening is Dr. Laryssa Doherty. Dr. Doherty currently is a continuous improvement facilitator and coach for the Center for Leadership and Educational Equity in Providence. And that she's been there since July of 2023. Previous to that, she was the Assistant Superintendent of Malden Public Schools, a position she held from July of 21 through June of 23. What we'll do this afternoon is I will introduce myself, and I will ask the rest of the committee to do that as well. And then, Dr. Doherty, what we'll ask for you to do is likewise give it a short introduction. And then you can move right into your presentation for your 90-day entry plan. After that, for that presentation, we're going to ask that it be a 15-minute or less presentation. Our member, Vice Chair Deb Polish, will be reminding you if you're running short on time with cue cards. And then following your presentation, the school committee members have prepared one question each to ask of you, and it's the same question for each of the candidates this evening. And so we'll go in order and ask you those questions, and we'd ask that you hold your answers to 5 minutes or less for each of those questions. Same thing, Deb will give you the old stink eye if you don't get it right. And then finally, after we're finished with the questions, I'll give you the opportunity to give us a closing statement. Okay, so I am Diane Farnworth. I'm chair of the Tiverton School Committee, and I do apologize to our last candidate. I didn't get into this, but I do think it helps for all of you. I'm in my 9th year on the school committee. I live here in town with my husband and son, who is a graduate of our high school, and I too am a graduate of Tiverton High School. So we'll start from our vice chair, Mrs. Polish, to introduce herself.
Hi, Deb Polish. I am going into...
Your microphone is off.
Deb Polish. Also had a son in the system. I am going into my 15th year on the board.
Hi, Kim Paquette. I have 2 boys that went through the school system, and I have a daughter who is currently in the school system, and this is my first year. Welcome.
Elaine Pavo. I served the district for 30 years, and I am in my 10th year.
Hi, Jocelyn Sherman. This is my first year. My oldest daughter graduated from the high school last year. My youngest is still in the high school. Welcome.
All righty, welcome. So, Dr. Doherty, I turn it over to you for your opening statement.
Okay, thank you very much. I am so delighted to be here. I actually wove my opening statement and introduction into the slides, so I will hopefully save us a little bit of time tonight in that. I am so wonderfully happy to be here tonight. I had a great time talking to the team a couple of weeks ago, and I left that interview thinking that I really found a home. And that's what I look for when I interview in places is those type of spaces. So I'm really excited to talk to you tonight about my 90-day plan. I'm honored to be a candidate for Tiverton Superintendent. And you can read my resume, you've seen my experience. Something I do want to highlight is with my over two decades of service in public education as a teacher, as a principal, as a district administrator, I've now built a very strong foundation in instructional leadership, in fiscal responsibility, and in community engagement. And I've chosen to be here tonight because those skills are what I perceive are a match for the needs of the Tiverton school community at this particular point in time and into the future. And those commitments that I have seen in this community to student-centered and community-grounded leadership is what resonates with me and my philosophy as a leader. So we're going to go ahead and get going. Absolutely. Closer to me or closer to you? I can also talk louder. Either way, dealer's choice. Of course. So the Tiverton Public Schools have a very strong foundation in a community that deeply values students and staff. That came very through in all of the pre-work that I looked at before I even chose to apply to this position. And as I continue to think about my presentation tonight, I really wanted to anchor this plan in the mission, vision, the portrait of a graduate, the work that's been ongoing in the last 5 to 10 years, because pre-COVID and post-COVID are two very different types of school systems, right? So in reflection of those shared values that myself as a leader and the community have developed, I have really thought deeply about where I want to be, which is why I'm here tonight. Your portrait of a graduate with the empathy, collaboration, responsibility, community, and critical thinking is very closely aligned to the work that I have done as a district and school leader, and it's very closely aligned to what I coach people to do now very successfully across Massachusetts and Rhode Island as superintendents and principals. So my purpose in my 90-day plan is to establish trust, to understand the district's strengths and challenges, and to lay the foundation for collaborative, student-centered leadership aligned to Tiverton's strategic priorities and authentic community needs. Tiverton faces some real key opportunities and challenges in this upcoming year. There's transparent budget planning, the building trust with the school reconfiguration process, and stabilizing enrollment. Those have come through very clear in my conversations with the community. I've successfully led through these transitions. My approach would be to listen first, to build genuine relationships, and to partner with stakeholders to develop responsive plans that are clear, sustainable, and grounded in our shared values, focused on not only our current students, but our future students. I have 4 main tenets that drive my plan and my work: to lead with transparency, humility, and empathy, to center our students' needs and voice in our decisions, to build systems and structures that reflect collective input and shared vision, and to honor Tiverton's history while collaboratively shaping our future. If I talk too fast, just let me know, because I'm a fast talker. My plan is broken down further into 3 distinct phases, and all of this is overlaid with the understanding that I would be coming in over the summer, where I would not be able to garner the type of engagement from all stakeholders that I would want to. So as I listen and learn, it starts at the beginning, but it does not end at the end of these 90 days. It does not mean that the listen and learn phase in 1 stops on day 31. It will continue to day 3,000 and whatever, right? And my math friends can do that math. These phases each have goals, key action steps, and deliverables that I'm going to talk to you tonight about that will shape what we do next. I like to move slowly and deliberately to go fast. I want to make sure that I have all the context that I need and the collaborative decision making so that we are anticipating challenges and making the best decisions for our students, our families, and our community. And that has served me well in many leadership capacities, particularly when we're facing challenges with budget, when we have to tell people bad news that they don't want to hear, but it's the right thing for our kids and our community. How we get through those challenges is super important. So our first stage of this will be to listen and learn. These first 30 days are about being present, visible, and engaged. I'll begin, and begin is the word, a comprehensive listening and learning tour. This will include visiting every school, meeting with staff and students, being visible during any summer programs, and being supportive in the preparations for the upcoming school year. Now, we know that not everybody's around, so this will continue throughout the year. I'm also going to hold one-on-one conversations with you, as well as union leaders, principals, central office staff, and municipal partners. Of course, we need to get into the community. I will host and go into the community to host focus groups with students, families, staff, community members to elevate their perspectives and learn more about the community itself. During this phase, I will seek to learn what the heart of Tiverton is, how it ticks. What are the hopes of the people most closely impacted by the decisions we make on a daily basis? What's going well under the surface that we can further elevate? What are the questions we're not asking that we need to be asking? And what are the things that we as a community are not going to compromise within the district when it comes to our children? In parallel, I'll conduct a deep document review, our strategic plans, our budget documents, school improvement plans, academic and enrollment data, to understand where we are, where we have been, and where we might be going. A key learning here will center on our progress and plans regarding our immediate challenges, specifically around academic success and how we're going to track the transitions that are going on and the effectiveness and efficacy of our staff as we've made some changes. How are we supporting our students, families, and staff in these changes? Also thinking about our budget planning, continuing to build trust, and the school reconfiguration. Given my experience with school closure, I'm quite adept at addressing these operational instructional challenges that come with a very heavy emotional toll. As a principal, I had to close my school during COVID. We were given 2 years as lead time. When I became principal, I was told by the superintendent, you were going to be a closing principal. 5 years later, they finally pulled the mark and said, okay, now we're really closing the school. It was very hard to do. And I wrote the playbook that is still being used by the Boston Public Schools to successfully close schools. Do they use all of it? I don't know. But I do know that people who have used the components of that plan have had a much more collaborative approach with the unions, with families, to support a successful transition that supports our families and our students to be able to get what they need and to understand the why behind the decisions, even when they may not agree. I'm confident that my skills and my experiences, both in Boston and Malden, have prepared me to take on this position at this time. At the end of this first 30 days, I'll release a public summary and a report to share what I've heard, highlighting the themes, the strengths, the opportunities for our growth, and a few priority steps that I'm going to suggest we take immediately so that we can get ready for the school year to launch. Our second phase will be to redesign and align. So once I've gathered this foundational understanding of our community, of really what it is to feel in the buildings, that next part will be to align and consider any redesign tweaks. And I say tweaks because they would be very, very small. I don't intend to come in and make a whole bunch of changes in August. I will still be learning. There might be immediate needs that need to shift based on feedback, based on what I see in data, based on conversations that are had as part of phase one. But those will be transparent conversations with you all and with the community, and there will be real reasons about why those decisions will need to be made, how they are made, and a collaborative way through those. I'll convene a cross-functional transition team to address the grade reconfiguration challenges and also to look at our instructional coherence amidst that transition. This team would optimally, eventually in phase 3, become the superintendent's cabinet. But again, we're talking about August. So not everyone is going to be back yet from their summer break. So we don't want to be exclusionary as we're forming these teams and continuing to collect information. I'll partner with our finance team at the school and municipal level to review and align the upcoming budget cycle, to think about our strategic priorities and what adjustments we need to make based on the grade reconfiguration, academic data, and other markers. And our aim here again is clarity, equity, and a shared understanding of needs. I'll work with our school leaders and educators to establish consistent expectations around communication, instructional coherence, professional learning, and the grade reconfiguration. It doesn't just end on the first day of school when the kids are in school. It's going to be a transition for multiple years that we will have to manage and support. I will also initiate conversations with our housing and municipal leaders to understand what our projected enrollment trends are and plan accordingly. I've heard over the last few days that housing prices are projected to level out and potentially drop over the next few years. We need to be thinking about that now for what that will be, the impact on our budget 3 or 4 years later, because that is how our budgets are funded. We need to be future-proofing now so we do not have to think about laying off our staff and the impact on our students 4 or 5 years down the road. My hope in this second phase is that I continue to strengthen and expand my relationships, to begin to address barriers in our shared values, and to lay the skeletal foundation for academic and pedagogical success through our collaboration, communication, and coherence. And again, at the end of this phase, I would share a progress brief and early drafts of action plans. So that would be an early draft of our school improvement plans, of our district improvement plans that I would have been working with our school level teams on in order to maintain transparency and foster community feedback. And there would also be a district-wide professional learning calendar at minimum, where we can think about what's happening across the district, so we can start cross-pollinating and thinking about how we share our best practices across particularly across the middle schools, or excuse me, the elementary schools, and then between the middle school and high school. Finally, in our third phase, so now the kids are in the buildings, we're in September, no one's sleeping, hopefully the kids are. So now I begin implementing some of these action tasks and some of the strategic actions that we have decided are in the best interest collaboratively of our district to implement immediately. I'll also be supporting this first month of school, so I'll be everywhere. I'll be like that old Visa commercial. I'm everywhere you want me to be and probably somewhere where you don't. I'm going to launch that Superintendent's Advisory Council, which will include students, families, staff, and community members, so that we're starting a two-way dialogue. It won't just be me providing information. It's truly an opportunity for me to get feedback, for new issues to arise. That also includes opportunities with our union folks to be able to have roundtable discussions so that we can be proactive about challenges that we can foresee before they come up. I'll formalize a school visit protocol, if there isn't already one, to ensure that I'm present and actively engaging with educators and students regularly, but not as a surprise. I don't want anybody feeling like it's a gotcha when the superintendent walks into the room. That's never the intention. And I also don't want to come into schools just when there's a crisis or when it's a celebration. I'm part of the community just like everyone else. And with leadership input, I'll finalize and share my first year goals, which will be directly tied to the strategic priorities and the needs identified through this listening process and our school's individual school improvement plans. So there will be concrete database benchmarks and timelines that will be tracked throughout the year from that first year plan. By this end of September, the rhythm of the school year will be underway, and while I'll still be listening and learning, this third phase is the opportunity for me to engage with all of the folks who are now fully back in the school year. So there'll be a little bit of phase 1 and phase 2 continuing for folks who didn't have an opportunity to engage in those spaces. And I fully intend to incorporate those experiences into phase 3 and beyond. This 90-day period will conclude with a public reflection and a year 1 action plan that I'll present to you all, and potentially in other community forums as needed, to maintain trust and clarity and accountability to me, because I am accountability to all of you and to all of our families, including an overview of the alignment of all of our school and district plans. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we will move into the question phase. We each have a question prepared, and we'll start down at this end with Jocelyn Sherman.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. So first question, a small school district such as ours requires a hands-on leader willing to dig in and manage day-to-day challenges for our district. How would you balance this while maintaining the vision of our strategic plan?
The strategic plan is a roadmap of our work, and I don't see them as separate. I see the work we do every day as leading towards that strategic plan. There are always going to be things that pull us away. That's the nature of the work. It's a 24/7, 365 responsibility. As a principal, I would be in classrooms all day, and then I would do all of the other, what we would call administrivia outside of school hours because I can't get into observation and be with teachers when teachers are not in the building. So I prioritize the things that need to be done with the folks that are in the buildings to collaborate while they are in the buildings. And then the other work gets done at other times. The work does get done. I pride myself on making sure that I meet deadlines, that I am organized. It's something that I have always been very attuned to, especially with project management, to be able to support the work moving forward. It's hard sometimes, and sometimes things will get away from you, but that's also the experience of knowing how to plan, knowing yourself to know how long things are going to take you, and knowing when to tap other people in. It's not about me doing the work alone. There's incredibly talented people in this district, many who I've already met, and I'm sure very, very many who I have not. And it's about us building the capacity within the district to do the work together. At the point that it gets tipped, we need to take a look at our priorities, because when everything's an emergency, nothing's an emergency. So we need to be taking a look at our work to say, okay, if we only have time to do this, we can do all the things and they'll get done, but what quality do we want them to be at? And those are hard conversations to have, but we will need to have them.
Thank you.
Can you provide a detailed example of how you handled the bullying and/or harassment incident of a student or staff or faculty member?
Absolutely. As the assistant superintendent in Malden, I actually brought the See Something, Say Something campaign to our district. We did not have a structure at the time for reporting. We also didn't have a policy that had been updated. So it took me a couple of years to get that moving through, at that time, the school committee. But by the time I left, we had a new policy that had been updated. We had a new flow, and with that, we had our students and staff that had been trained. And I say that as a preface to the example, because it's important to note that we didn't have a structure. There's a structure here, which is wonderful. The hardest thing about bullying is the definition of bullying. Oftentimes, things are not reported to us. So in that moment with Title IX, we have to take a look and see how long has it been happening. We have to go and do the full investigation to be able to support the students. When it's student on student, it's hard. I'm trying to hold confidentiality here, which is the tricky part of your question. I had a situation where there were 2 elementary school students of 2 different grade levels, and one student was a student on an IEP who had some behaviors related to their needs that were appropriate behavior. They weren't inappropriate behaviors, but another student would consistently target their behaviors, and they would get their friends to target, because that student thought, well, it's not always me, so it can't be bullying because it's not always me. So we had to pull, and I worked with the principal because I was the assistant superintendent at the time, not a principal. So we worked with those students to help them understand, number one, that's bullying. That's still bullying. And we needed to get to the underlying cause of why it was happening. And so we worked with the student who was the ringleader, for lack of a better word. The challenge in that particular situation was that the family was not in agreement that it was bullying. So we had to have a lot of conversations that were not about this is the law, this is the policy. It was about helping people understand about how we treat people, and this is not how we're going to treat people. And eventually we did get there to that space of bringing people together. And it was a very long haul, though, of having a lot of conversations and helping to educate the family about needs of others in a space where they didn't believe that their child was doing anything wrong. And they didn't believe that their child's language was wrong. It was fine for them to talk that way at home. And we had to impress upon the family that that's fine. What you talk in your home, we're not going to regulate. But when you're in school, that's not appropriate. And it ended up, we did the full investigation. There were consequences. We went through the whole operational component and technical component. But at the end of the day, being able to support the child and building the education in was what stopped the other children, because they also received education on the situation. That was what helped stem other situations from happening, because often if you don't get to that other space, those children go off and then it spreads into another space. So I'm trying to be specific without giving you incredible detail and confidentiality. I apologize, Elaine, if that's not.
Thank you. Thank you.
All righty. How would you maintain fidelity to the Rhode Island Education Reform Act while maintaining transparency and accountability to your school board?
Well, we're all here for the kids at the end of the day. It's about the kids. And we have a legal requirement to follow state laws. So part of my responsibility is to help us collectively understand what those laws are, where our kids are, and what our challenges are in meeting those sometimes changing expectations, and being able to understand where the gray areas are, where we can have choice and where we can't have choice, and being able to find the places where we can advocate to the State House as we need to for change at a policy level. It's always going to be tricky because sometimes our personal beliefs don't align with what we are legally obligated to do. So in that space, we have to come to an agreement that we may not like what the legal requirements are, but we can understand what they are, understand what the impact is, and then figure out what we're going to do as a community together to make sure we're following the expectations from RIDE and we're meeting the needs of students.
All right, thank you.
With traditional school district enrollment in Rhode Island declining, could you share some strategies that would attract and retain students in the Tiverton public school system?
It's a great question, Kimberly, and this question came up in some of my previous interactions, and it's been playing on repeat in my head. A couple of things that I have thought about, and I have been looking at our social media and our Tiverton social media footprint. We have a lot to celebrate in this district, and I'd like to see that broadcast beyond Rhode Island. I could see folks from across the border moving into Tiverton. I could see other folks coming for a vacation and staying for longer. I think we can work with our municipal folks to better identify the trends. A question I asked actually back in my previous interview was to better understand how Tiverton's enrollment numbers and the shifts are similar or different than the state enrollment numbers and shifts. Our community is a little bit different here. So what's the percentage of our kiddos that are school age that don't come to our schools? Can we understand why? What's going to attract the kiddos here? Why? And we know it's the whole Northeast. It's not just Rhode Island. Folks are leaving the Northeast. So we have to figure out what our niche is and then broadcast that for folks to come in. I did not know that we had the secondary school principal of the year until I did my own individual research on the district. That should smack you in the face, not when you're looking at Tiverton, but just somewhere in general. We should have more things out there, not just when people look for us, but just out there so that when folks are thinking about what's a good school system in Rhode Island, it's there in front of their face. Or what's a good school system in the Northeast. Our ELA and math scores are significantly higher than many, many districts. That's something to celebrate. Do we want to still take a look and get them higher? Of course we do. But they're still aglow. We can celebrate these things more widely, but we also need to understand a little bit more granular in the data to understand what else is happening. If it's different, can we pinpoint anything that we can do differently?
Thank you.
So hopefully end on a little bit lighter note. My question is, you've spent significant time learning about our community and our school district. What excites you the most about joining Tiverton and our community?
So this might surprise you. What excites me the most about this community is honestly the feeling that I had when I left my first interview. I'm in a wonderful position where I really enjoy the work I'm doing right now. So I don't have to go anywhere. So I get to choose my next steps if I want next steps. And it's a luxury. And when I first saw the posting, I thought, oh, this looks like a really cool community. I'm going to dig a little more. And then I looked at the values. I said, okay, I looked at the challenges. I was like, all right, I've done that. It looks like my skills could really, really support. And in my experience, I have seen these challenges been done in ways that can sometimes be harmful. These transitions can sometimes be not as smooth. And I still so appreciate the teachers and my former students and families that still contact me and go, you know what, my little brother, my little sister, or whatnot, their school is closing and we don't know what's happening. Can you call that principal and tell us? I'm like, no. Like I can try, but they're probably not going to, if they're not telling you anything, I don't think they're going to tell me anything. I've been out of that school system for almost 10 years now, but I'll try. And that idea that some of these things come really naturally to me, that we need to be transparent, that we need to involve folks in our decision making, that people will accept bad news if they understand the bad news. My own community right now, where I live, has had to make some really challenging choices, and they've had to make some explanations. And it's very, very hard to do, and it's harder to do well. And I know it's a strength of mine, and I enjoy a challenge. So it excites me that I could come in and support a community and then stay. I really want to stay. I didn't get to stay in my principalship when I was brought in to turn the school around. They said, you're going to close. No, you're not going to close. We went back and forth. And even amidst COVID and amidst potential closure and then actual closure, we had the highest growth scores of all of the kids in those grade levels in the entire Boston Public Schools. And we had been a turnaround school before I took the helm of that school 4 years prior. We made significant progress because we built community and we focused on what was important. And I sometimes wish we hadn't closed, because I wonder what we would be doing now if we'd had the opportunity to stay open. So I'm really hopeful that I can lead this community through these challenging transitions. I can support and be a beacon, a lighthouse in the storm, and then continue to support as we go forward into the unknown.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to give you an opportunity to close things out if you'd like,
Sure.
and we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks, Diane. So you've heard that my approach is grounded in this idea of clarity, collaboration, and student-centered decision-making. And I believe deeply in leading with humility, showing up with curiosity, courage, and care. And I see this role not just as a leadership position, but as a chance to become part of this very vibrant and resilient community. And these first 90 days that I presented today aren't quick fixes. They're about building relationships, understanding the heart of the community, and co-constructing a path forward that reflects Tiverton's values and aspirations. And I just look forward to our next steps together.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Okay, we're going to go for another short recess. Thank you. We're going to go back into session. Thank you. All right. Last on our agenda, but not least this evening, is Mr. Christopher Haskins. He's currently the superintendent of schools of the Paul Cuffey Charter Schools in Providence and has been since 2014. Previous to that, he was an elementary school principal in the Westerly Public Schools for a period of 7 years, 2007 to 2014, and certainly experiences prior to that. The way we're going to run this, it's the same for each of our candidates this evening. We'll start with brief introductions of the school committee and of yourself, and then we'll ask you to go into your presentation. We'll ask that you keep it to 15 minutes or less. If you're in danger of going over that time, Mrs. Polish will warn you with cue cards. And then after your presentation is complete, you'll get a question from each of the school committee members, during which you'll be given 5 minutes maximum to answer the questions. If it's less, it's fine. Again, Mrs. Polish is our timekeeper. There won't be, in order to keep things on an even level, there won't be any follow-up questions from us this evening. And then once we're finished with the question period, I'll ask you to deliver a quick closing statement, and then we will be ready to rock and roll. Sound good? Okay, so as introduction, I am Diane Farnworth. I'm the chair of the Tiverton School Committee. I live here in town with my husband and my son, who is a graduate of Tiverton High School, and I too, my husband and I are both graduates of Tiverton High School as well. So we've been here for a long time, and we're deeply invested in our community. I'll start with our vice chair, Deb Polish.
Hi, Deborah Polish. I also had a son that went through the system, and I am on my 15th year on the board.
Hi, welcome. My name is Kim Parquette. I have 2 sons that went through the school district and have graduated. I have a daughter that is in the school district. This is my first term on the school committee.
I'm Elaine Pavo. I have 3 children who went through the district. I have 5 grandchildren who went through the district. And I worked in the district before I retired, of course, for over 30 years. This is my 10th year on the school committee.
Hello, Jocelyn Sherman. It's my first year on the school committee. My oldest daughter graduated from the high school last year, and my youngest is a junior here. Welcome.
Okay, so Mr. Haskins, if you're ready to give us your introduction and then go right into your presentation.
Sure, thank you. Well, first, thank you for that. Madam Chair, members of the school committee, members of the Tiverton community. It's truly an honor to be here to interview for the position of superintendent. As you know, my name is Chris Haskins. I'm an educational leader who's worked in Rhode Island for the last 22 years in leadership capacity. I live in East Greenwich with my wife, Ann, and my 9-month-old son, James, and my 17-year-old son, Nolan, and I have a 22-year-old daughter in Newport. I'm honored to be here because I've admired the Tiverton School Department from afar for many years, since as an early principal meeting the principal of the Fort Barton Elementary School when it became a Blue Ribbon School, and I've admired the progress of the district over the time. So it's a real thrill to be here to interview for this position. You have my resume, so I won't go too deeply into my background, and I'm sure some of my experience will come out in the questions. But if we're ready, I can start with the 90-day entry plan. First, it was a treat to be able to immerse myself into this plan, and hopefully I will be using this plan if I am the assumed candidate. Assuming that I am the superintendent of the Tiverton School Department, it's essential to have a strong plan, but a few caveats about this plan. First, the plan should be shaped by those who currently live and work in the district. This is a plan assumed by an outside candidate who is assuming some things about the district. Thanks to your current superintendent, assistant superintendent, your principals and support staff, Tiverton is not a blank canvas. It is a rich tapestry with a lot of great programming happening. This is in no way intended to assume that I would be imparting my vision into the district. And as you'll see, the first 90 days, and really throughout the first year, it's a listening and learning experience. If we start with purpose. So here are the contents. I've broken up the plan into 3 phases. Phase 1 and 2 I'm going to speak about in tandem. And then there's phase 1 I'll speak about specifically, phase 2 and phase 3. So first, the purpose of the plan is to build trust, create transparency, and model collaborative leadership. The plan aims to foster open and honest communication with all the stakeholders, the students, families, principals, district leaders, community members, school committee members, and town leaders to model transparency in all interactions. During these first 90 days, I will prioritize deep listening and engagement through school visits, stakeholder interviews, focus groups, and surveys. I'll gather a wide range of perspectives to understand the experiences, the hopes, the concerns of the Tiverton community. Part of the process is to build momentum, identifying and elevating the existing strengths of the district while also pinpointing urgent areas for support or improvement. And then finally, aligning short-term actions with long-term district goals. All of the entry activities will be grounded in and aligned with the district's broader strategic goals. The intended outcomes are to build strong, trust-based relationships with key stakeholders, to gather a comprehensive understanding of the district realities, to conduct a robust data analysis, and to build a shared vision and strategic priorities reflected in a participatory budget process. So for phases 1 and 2, for the first 75 days, I've titled this Listen and Learn. I will conduct one-on-one introductory meetings with school committee members, municipal leaders, central office administrators, school leaders, union leadership, to learn firsthand their understanding of the current realities of the Tiverton Public Schools. I will also hold listening and learning sessions in forums for families and caregivers, community organizations, student leaders at the middle and the high school, using an interactive process such as the World Cafe. This is just an example of a process I've used, and I've included in the appendix. The World Cafe is a fun process centered around questions that matter. I have found that these interactive experiences get people in the community talking to one another, and we prepare questions that matter, such as, what do you see as the strengths of the Tiverton schools? What are some of the challenges that you've experienced? Of course, without naming individuals or specific situations where we know the individuals that you're talking about, it is important to get an understanding of some of the challenges of the district. What would you like to communicate to us about your child's education and your child's experience? And what do you think is most important for our schools at this time? And how can we do better? These types of constructivist-based questions allow members of the community to engage with each other through a fun and interactive process. I will reach out to town leaders, clergy, youth program directors, and business partners to begin to form relationships with local leaders. These are relationships that take time, especially because they're not working directly in the school system. I will certainly establish my presence at school and town events, being visible at the start of the school day, the end of the school day, during night events, athletic events, and other opportunities. I will tour the school facilities with school leaders and facilities personnel using facilities walkthrough checklists. I will meet regularly with school and district leaders to align the strategic plan, the school improvement plans, and the key action items. I will maintain a vigilant month-to-month oversight of the FY26 budget expenditures to prevent deficit spending. I will review the union contracts and meet with union leaders to begin to build collaborative relationships. And I will conduct a fiscal review of the past 3 years, including the general operating fund, the capital budget, audit reports and any corrective actions, ESSER funding expenditures, the consolidated resource plan, enrollment and staffing patterns, class size patterns, technology expenditures, transportation expenditures, utility costs. All of these things are rising in school departments. And then I will assess the budgetary process in order to develop an understanding of the current timeline and roles. And I will review how Tiverton communicates and engages with stakeholders, identifying any gaps and district communication or community access to budget information. So that's across the first two phases. But for the first phase, I would title this Immediate Priorities. First, to support the transition post-Fort Barton Elementary School closing. There is a reconfiguration we're experiencing here in Tiverton, including bringing fourth grade to the middle school and bringing students from Fort Barton to the existing schools, Pecasset and Ranger. It's important to prioritize smooth transitions for students, staff, and families, including the elementary age children who will be attending new schools and the fourth graders who will be attending Tiverton Middle School. Fun fact, my niece Lily will be attending Gaudette Middle School next year as a fourth grader in Middletown. And her parents are confident in the school's ability to keep her and her classmates separated from the older children. These types of conversations with parents in the school community can help to reduce any anxieties. What I've learned is that people don't fear change, they fear the loss associated with change. If we can honor that loss and identify opportunities for students, then we can help to ease those anxieties. To ensure opportunities for students and their families to tour the new schools before the school year begins. To use structured group reflection for the staff, such as the Becoming One community protocol, which I've included in the appendix. This honors the legacy of the Fort Barton Elementary School staff, as well as the reconfigured Pecasset, Ranger, and Tiverton Middle Schools. Helps to build unity and emphasizes that the receiving schools are evolving communities that are strengthened by the experiences of those joining them. This is a fishbowl type of activity where selected returning and new staff members are able to talk about the culture, the qualities, the unique traditions in each of the schools in a way to become one community. I will review the existing district plans, budgets, and enrollment data. That enrollment data is comprehensive, and it's included in Appendix 6. This is to really understand the priorities and alignment. It is a priority if it is identified appropriately with the time, attention, and money that we devote to it. So analyzing the district budget along with the district strategic plan is essential to gain that understanding. Analyzing enrollment trends to understand the impact on staffing, program, and facilities. And I'll skip here because I think I'm probably taking too much time. During the first weeks of school, it tends to be quiet in a school district, so in the summer. So I will use that time to overlearn some of the district information systems, such as the student information system. It's Aspen. I'm used to Skyward, so taking some training there. Curriculum management system may be different. The district communication system may be different. So I don't want to bog down others with my lack of knowledge. So to overlearn those systems would be important. And then really essentially meeting with district leaders, school leaders, and teacher leaders to review and refine the plans for the August 25th and 26th professional development days and the August 27th convocation. And then, of course, meet regularly with school and district leaders to prepare for school opening. The deliverable for you at the end of those 30 days would be the 30-day report, with the essential question being, am I on the right track? For phase 2, days 30 through 75, this is engage and assess. So these would be a series of community roundtables and student forums to hear directly from the families, staff, and community leaders, focusing conversations on what's working well, areas of concern, and aspirations for the Tiverton Public Schools. Hosting student voice forums at the school to gather authentic input from learners about their school experience, and then documenting and reporting common themes and actionable feedback. I would facilitate instructional leadership and budget priority teams. This would be one team that would look at the instructional leadership and budget priorities as a whole, i.e. scrubbing the budget, make sure that our money is going to where our priorities are, and promote transparency and inclusivity by incorporating voice into instructional and financial planning processes. I would analyze the curriculum offering, staffing models, and building use along with the district staff, and evaluate our short-term and long-term facility needs and any additional funding opportunities that are out there, grants, gifts, other restricted and non-restricted funding. The end of the 75-day would be a superintendent 75-day report with the essential question being, am I seeing and hearing things correctly? And then for phase 3, this is day 75 and beyond. I've termed this act, communicate, and plan forward. I would prepare for the FY27 budget process early, sharing with the community clear, collaboratively developed fiscal priorities aligned to district goals, excuse me. Here we are. Fiscal responsibility and student achievement. You'll see in Appendix D a sample budget guidance memo for FY24 to school and district leaders. I would collaborate with school and district leaders to align the school-based budgets with district priorities and build budget development capacity and provide training on basic budget concepts. I've been a superintendent for 11 years. It took some time to learn the ins and outs of financial reporting, and that takes some time for school leaders and others in the school department to really become skillful in using budget sheets. I would launch a transparent budget communication plan. That's in Appendix E. This would be to develop and share a year-long budget calendar with key input for feedback from staff, families, and town partners. And I would use multiple communication tools, newsletters, town website, town bulletin boards, short informational videos. All of these can be helpful in getting out the message about the budgetary planning process. What I have learned as school communities have demanded over the last few years a greater transparent and more participatory budget process is that the budget process starts very early, and you can never communicate too much about process, and that how we develop a budget has everything to do with how well that budget is supported. And then finally, I would present an entry plan feedback reflection report to you. That's in Appendix F. There's a sample there. This would summarize all of the stakeholder feedback that I've gained over the 90 days, any fiscal insights that I've developed over that time, and any early recommendations that I would have in a public-facing report for you and for the general public. Finally, I would document all activities in a strategic actions planner. I apologize for the small print in Appendix G. I printed it from Microsoft Excel, but if you actually click into the document, you'll see each of these phases has its own sheet with all of the action steps, what it looks like when it's done, who's responsible, and the timeline. Deliverables for Phase 3 include the entry plan reflection report, the FY27 budget guidance memo, the draft budget calendar with engagement points for the school community and greater community, a summary of stakeholder budget input, an initial list of partnerships, potential partnerships, and shared services opportunities. The essential question here being, are we meeting expectations for a transparent and participatory budget process? We know that we get the governor's recommended state aid in January or February. I know that the town of Tiverton has a process where there's a budget presented by the town council in May, but that's preliminary and that is voted at the end of June. But starting the process early is essential to building trust in the process. The key themes that I've identified across this phase landscape is trust building and collaborative leadership, transparency and communication, equity-centered and student-focused decision-making, strategic fiscal stewardship, instructional quality and continuous improvement, and transition and community unity as we enter the post-Fort Barton Elementary School closure. And now this page, I've identified key metrics and indicators of progress. And since I have 1 minute, I'll skip to closing and commitments. As I've expressed here, I commit to being a visible, responsive, and inclusive leader. I pledge to lead with empathy, urgency, and humility. But please know that urgency does not always meet our goals if it's not combined with a sense of calmness, which I do possess. My mission is to ensure that every Tiverton student has access to an excellent and equitable education, and I look forward to learning from and working with each of you in the greater Tiverton community to build on Tiverton's strengths and pursue its full potential. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll now move on to the question portion. We each have one question to ask you that have been prepared in advance, and we're going to go right down the line. So starting with Jocelyn Sherman, if you don't mind kicking off.
Thank you for that presentation.
You're welcome.
So first question, a small school district such as ours requires a hands-on leader willing to dig in and manage day-to-day challenges for our district. How would you balance that while maintaining the overall strategic plan?
Balancing executive leadership and visible leadership is not only a good strategy, it's essential in a community the size of Tiverton, where relationships are everything, where the schools are embedded in the community, and where the schools are the center of civic life. Not only is it important, it's a great amount of fun. It is really enjoyable to interact with students, teachers, families, leaders. It is the lifeblood of the work of leadership, and without it, it becomes just a boring, desk-oriented job. That being said, there's a lot of desk work. There's a lot of detail that comes with running a school department. And there are a lot of face-to-face board meetings, closed-door meetings that have to happen. What I have found over time is that when we can allow the classroom to live in the boardroom, when we're in the boardroom to be able to connect to our educator roots, it helps to sustain the spirit that's needed to drive action. Trusting relationships help to buoy that spirit. Using the research behind high-functioning teams, where we honor each person's individual contribution, we respect diversity of opinion, divergent thought. That's where creativity sets in. A practical answer to your question, it's about scheduling. Looking at the schedule a month in advance, 2 weeks in advance, a week in advance, and the night before and the morning of is really important. I have been able to use smart scheduling to help do this in my work. At the Paul Cuffey Charter School District, I am a regular presence, beginning at the beginning of the school day at each of the 3 schools, making time to be at lunch. There's a lot you can tell about a school community by how students interact with one another at lunch, being visible in non-classroom spaces as well. Working with the principals and the district leadership team for focused learning walks, working with teacher leaders and school principals in professional learning communities. All of that helps to balance the important desk work that's required of the job and the classwork that really is the heart of the job and makes it enjoyable and helps to improve achievement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Set. Can you provide a detailed example of how you handled a bullying and/or harassment incident of a student or staff faculty member?
Certainly. First, we're fortunate that we have the Safe Schools Act in Rhode Island, and we have bullying policies. The only criticism I would have about bullying policies is that they are heavy on the response and light on the prevention. And with bullying, prevention is key. Helping children to understand how to talk to and with one another and how to act to and with one another can prevent 95% of problem behaviors, which include bullying. That being said, students sometimes make mistakes, and sometimes they make the same mistakes over and over. So it's critical to have a policy that helps to protect students who are victims of bullying. And bullying happens in all schools, across all demographics. And the key is making sure that we're doing the best we can to prevent it, that we have a clear and easy-to-use reporting system, and that we respond immediately. The Rhode Island law requires that the principal investigates the day of the report, and that parents are notified immediately. And so, yes, I have experienced as a superintendent and as a principal, prevention and response to bullying. Let me think of a particular example. So this year we have had 28 reports of bullying at the Paul Cuffey Middle School. 19 of those were found to not be bullying, and 9 of them were found to be bullying. Now, just because it's not bullying doesn't mean it's not a problem. But bullying can be defined as by its level of significance of harm and or the pervasiveness of the harm. Seemingly small acts could be bullying if they are pervasive, if they happen over time, if they cause others to ostracize an individual. Those seemingly small acts could be bullying. And so we did have a similar situation. This school year, we received a bullying report of a young lady, complaining about a young lady who was bullying her. After investigating, we determined that, in fact, there was bullying happening. But interestingly, oftentimes, the person who was bullying has been bullied. And in this case, the person who was bullying had been bullied herself. And looking at the past interaction between the two youths, we determined that this was a chronic problem. We instituted what's termed a consequential contract. A consequential contract is signed by each party, and it's a commitment for all of the things that each individual will do in interacting with the other, and each thing the individual will not do when interacting with the other. That is signed, agreed to, reviewed and shared with the parents, and it includes a provision that if the other party says or does anything that's on this list, that you are to report it immediately. And that did happen. And so the bullying response process has multi-steps. Sometimes a consequential contract works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes mediation works, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to have a response for if it doesn't work. In this case, the two students were separated. Their classrooms were separated, and there were support staff that were assigned to monitor those students during non-classroom settings, lunch, for example, hallways, arrival and dismissal time. Thankfully, at this point, we have not seen any escalated interaction between the two youths. But to recap, prevention is key. Working with our classroom teachers, using bully prevention curricula. We use at the elementary level a curricula called Stop, Walk, Talk. That's published by PBIS in elementary schools. And it's a very simple way for students to intervene if they're noticing problem behavior, using the word stop. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work, walk, remove yourself from the situation. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and if it doesn't work, talk, tell an adult so that the adult can intervene. Likewise, at the high school, it's a little bit different. We have something called Project Respect. It's another process of explicitly teaching students behaviors that are respectful and disrespectful, and the avenues that they can take to report it. And I'll close with this. Having few reported cases of bullying does not mean we don't have a bullying problem. It means we are probably underreporting bullying issues. I would rather have 28 bullying reports at the middle school and have only 9 of them be bullying than to only receive 9 reports, because it means people are using the system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How do you maintain fidelity with the Rhode Island Education Reform Act while maintaining transparency and accountability with your school board?
So that's a really important question. In 2018, the Educational Accountability Act identified site-based leadership in all of our schools. And it's been a process. So now we're in 2025 now, so it's been 7 years. The greatest way to support this is through the use of school improvement teams. And school improvement teams aren't new in Rhode Island. They've been around since I started as a principal back in 2003. School improvement teams, when run well, are a mechanism for site-based management. where members of the community, including teachers, support professionals, paraprofessionals, school leaders, and parents, are able to have substantive conversation and decision-making about the goings-on in the school. The curriculum, the instruction, the assessment, the policy implementation, site-based budgeting, if that's in process. All of that requires time and consistent leadership. So I would say, A, to use the school improvement teams, to make sure that the school improvement plans are reflective of the district strategic plan, because that's, they can't be in competition with one another. And in my review of the school improvement plans and the strategic plan here in Tiverton, they do seem to be symbiotic plans. They do feed into one another. And making sure that there are reporting mechanisms. At the Paul Cuffey Charter School, as a part of our regular school board meetings, we have a monthly update of our strategic plan and school improvement plan goals. It keeps the school board informed about the goings-on in the school, and it helps to influence the site-based teams based on the district vision for improvement. The budget piece, I think we're far off. I think that we have at the Paul Cuffey Charter School District developed some semblance of a site-based budget, especially when it comes to supplies and materials. But things like salaries, benefits, healthcare, et cetera, transportation, all of those costs are really still held in the central office seat. But supplies and materials, field trip budgets, we have transferred to school leadership team responsibilities. And it's a good example of how a tight budget season can refresh, it can build momentum around decision making. We at the Paul Cuffey Charter School District were faced with a 1.5 projected budget deficit for FY25. What we did was we said, okay, here's the allocated money for each school for supplies and materials and field trips, and here's a process that your teams can use to identify how you're going to spend those expenditures, spend that revenue. And from that, we now have a more ownership at each of the schools related to these discretionary areas of the budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With traditional school district enrollment in Rhode Island declining, could you share some strategies that would attract and retain students in the Tiverton Public Schools?
Thank you, Kim. That's a question where I currently sit on the other side of the table as the superintendent of a charter school district, where a big part of my job is to recruit students. Now, there's something very different operating a charter school in the city of Providence than there is from the students in the town of Tiverton. There is no reason why students should be leaving the Tiverton Public Schools. Tiverton has an excellent school system, top performance, blue ribbon schools. And so the question is why? Why are members of the community seeking alternatives to the Tiverton School Department? And there can be a whole host of reasons for that. But one of the strategies I would use would be to take a play from the charter school playbook, to develop high quality promotional materials that identify our college acceptance rate, the quality of colleges that students are accepted to, the career and technical offerings, any pathways programs that are offered, to support those programs, to help grow those programs, to identify the advanced placement opportunities at Tiverton High School, to promote and advertise the strong SAT performance relative to other districts. These are the indicators that help students be prepared for the demands of college and career. So demonstrating how a Tiverton education prepares students for college and career would be an opportunity. I would use a strategy of empathy interviews, just coming out and asking, to families who have chosen to send their child to a school outside, whether it's charter school, private school, parochial school, independent, other opportunities. Why? What is it that you find the school is offering that the Tiverton schools are not? And what feedback would you have for our school system in order to make the Tiverton schools an attractive option for your child? So exploring the reasons parents choose alternatives to the Tiverton school would be important. And then, as I said, creating and providing promotional material that demonstrates the success rate that the Tiverton schools has met.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So last but not least, hopefully a little bit lighter question. You've spent significant time learning about our community and our school district. What excites you the most about joining Tiverton and our community?
Thank you for that question. Obviously, I've been thinking long and hard about that. Do I want to work in Tiverton, and why? There are a few things that excite me the most about Tiverton. When I first heard of the opportunity, I was excited initially because of the reputation of the Tiverton schools. Having a long track record of success. It's a geographically beautiful community. Driving over the bridge of Route 24, it's just gorgeous. I've been trying to convince my wife to move to the island where my parents live. This might be a way to get her closer to the idea. Anne's parents live in Lincoln, so but eventually would like to move closer to the Tiverton area. But really what attracts me the most is the size of the community. I worked as a successful principal in the Westerly School Department for 7 years. I achieved a great amount of success in that school department. And I found that the size of the district really was a place where I could make meaningful relationships and collaboratively create some change that was needed in the district. Looking at Tiverton, it's a similarly sized district. It's a little bit smaller. It's about twice the size, maybe a little bit larger than the size of the Paul Cuffey Charter School District. But I think it's a place where I could get to know the teachers, students, leaders, community members well. I'm a relationship-driven leader. Spending time in the mutual interests of student success excites me. You have a school department that has been well led for a number of years, and obviously is now experiencing some budgetary challenges. That might shy another candidate away. That actually truly excites me, because these are the types of challenges that can help to grow relationships. Now out of an $18 million budget at the Paul Cuffey Charter School District, a $1.5 million projected deficit is a huge concern. And what I've learned through that process is that the leadership from the top can set the tone on how people react. Calm, decisive leadership that takes ownership and can help work collaboratively to identify solutions. It seems like a great opportunity and a great time for me to step into Tiverton. You're welcome.
All right, that takes us to the end of our questions. So I'll give you now an opportunity to wrap things up with a closing statement.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just close by saying I think timing is everything. I think it's the right time for me at this point in my career to take the step from a small charter school district to a larger but yet still small community district like Tiverton. And I hope that the time is right for Tiverton. I have been described as a visionary leader, but I need to preface that by saying that my visionary leadership involves others, that it's more of a percolating effect, like collaborative leadership, learning from and with one another. I certainly have a great deal of experience in the role of superintendent, but I would come into this job as a learner, learning about the unique culture in the community of Tiverton, apprenticing myself to the organization as a new employee, and making sure that I attend to developing relationships with all the stakeholders across the community. I'm passionate about what I do, and I've learned over time to personify that in a nice, calm, measured approach. I am open to feedback. I've developed the maturity to deal with any public criticism with composure and humility. That's just part of the job. I have a tremendous support network at home, so I can handle what comes at me. And I'll just close by saying I'm thrilled and honored to have the opportunity to interview with you, and look forward to the possibility of working with you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So that takes us to the end of our agenda this evening. So may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.